some years we'll recover $1 million. The next year we recover 300,000. And so it's all over the place as far as recoveries go. Unfortunately, like many crimes, those who commit them oftentimes don't have the financial resources to be able to make full compensation. Fortunately, a lot of the cases, especially those auto accident past postings or crash and buys, insurance catches those cases before they pay out. And so we prosecute those cases as a deterrent effect. And we also look to educate the public to keep them from committing this type of fraud to begin with. We'd much rather not have to pursue criminal prosecutions against people with no criminal history for being dumb. That momentary lapse of judgment. Like I say, many of the people that commit insurance fraud are not criminals. They're not people that would see themselves as committing crimes. One of my defendants um, committed 27 different insurance fraud violations over the course of time. And the first time through, he spent 9 months in jail. He came out, reoffended. There were new charges, plus all of the charges he had previously pled guilty to. Those prison sentences were then imposed, and he spent over 6 years in prison. So, insurance fraud can result in prison. It can result in huge, massive fines. We have people that have been paying restitution for over a dozen years. And then we have people that pay their restitution very quickly, and 18 months later, the case is gone and they're back living their crime free life.
I started to notice for myself, oh, I need to teach more, because unless I get a big film or a regular character on a TV series, a series regular role, I can't sustain my life without having a second job. And I think most actors live in that zone. Is they live in a zone where they teach, they have a side business. Um, I know a number of actors who are also therapists, and they went back to school because they realized they need to earn money. Everyone hopes for the glamour and everyone hopes for the big paychecks, but for the most part, most of us are just sort of surviving. And with what has been offered to us, survival for most of us seems impossible if those are the rates of how they go about it. I know I'm not famous. I know that, uh, that I work and whatnot. But there's a level of respect that has disappeared because they it feels like they don't care. It feels like bottom line money is more important than project, is more important than integrity, and I think actors in general are create families when we work, whether it's a play or a film or a TV show. We sort of come together as a unit, and that can be a really bonding experience, and it's really wonderful. But it feels very removed from our bosses now. They seem to be people over there, and there's a cutthroatness that's different. The business has always been cutthroat in some regards, but it's different now. It just feels very brass tacks money. Can we make money off of you? Can we not? Can we cut you out financially and make this work? Yes, let's do that. And so there's a coldness to it.
The company that I work for, they're trying to open that up, and it's for more for like the homeless veterans and things like that. Um, and it's ironic that they wanted to open that, but the state of Utah is giving them a hard time about that and allowing them to open that. So you have these two sides where, yeah, they want to combat like homelessness, but like on the flip side, and like they're making it more difficult for people to actually open up housing for those individuals. So a double-edged sword a lot of the time, and a lot of um, I don't know, hearsay. And like, yes, we want to help the homeless people, but no, you can't build that because we're going to make it difficult and we don't want to give you money to open it. So that's where that is. I will say there are programs that are out there that are trying to get grants to start that help with these problems. Um, but that takes years to get grants and starting up an office. So by the time they get there, there's maybe 1,000 plus people that weren't able to be helped and just end back up on the street, or dying from a drug overdose because they don't want to deal with it anymore.
So even with the church, there is a division. In the Catholic Church, whether or not you practice is irrelevant because we're culturally raised Catholic and it's part of our Latino heritage. But nevertheless, there is a division. You have, moderates to up to the Pope that are very pro LGBT, but you have a right wing group of bishops that are anti gay. And it's scary because they also take that to the political heights, of supporting issues that real right wingers support. So, I think that, we got to look at all the areas or facets of, messages that come through and movements that take place and really look into what's causing these movements, what's causing these messages. And it seems to be the same right wing extremism that we're facing in this country. What we're noticing today is that, and in a lot of the nonprofits, you're having a shift taking place, especially after the COVID-19. We know that it's hard to retain employees, but we're also seeing senior leadership moving on to somewhere else. And so we're seeing a vacuum of those in those leadership positions. That's number one. Number two, I think it's important that when we're leading an organization, it's great to stay focused on all the work that you do and all the work that you get funded for. But it's sometimes you have to be a bigger leader and you have to fight for the principles that impact your community and your constituents. And if you don't do that, then you allow people in government and elected office to run you over. Because they don't have the experience that nonprofits have. Elected officials are here one day and they may run for another office and they're gone somewhere else.
I think people do what they've always done. And you don't know what to do until you go through it yourself. Then you know how to support someone. But with people is they just follow what they've always done with funerals and with checking in with people, even to the point of saying, I'm sorry for your loss. Those trivialized things that we see in the movies or on TV, and we forget about the individual. We forget about the emotions that a person is handling. And I think we need to step back and observe what is actually going on rather than just get so caught up in what is taking place. We need to view like the experience that's happening. And then it allows us to make intentional decisions to help someone through that grief. People approach grief so differently, and it's based on their experience. And most of the time, they don't have a lot of experience. So they just kind of either put on a mask, hold in the emotions, isolate, um, try to like, and the way that I describe grief, it's kind of like it's this hole that's missing. This hole out of our life that has been taken out of our life, whether it's an accident or an illness. It's this hole, and what people try to do is they try to fill up this hole so life can resume in a normal process. like nothing ever happened. But the problem with people is they're trying to mask those emotions or cover it up. So they do it with like either substance or relationships or eating or social media or exercise. They just fill this up without feeling the emotions that they're experiencing. Because if they can feel it, then feel the emotions and let it go. If they can do that, they will grieve and heal properly. Um, that's the hard part.
If you are struggling with your mental health or substance abuse, your health insurance should have programs in place that will help you. They should cover your substance abuse treatments, therapy, and other things that you need, including medication. And while we were researching into conditions that Americans suffer from, we found out that diabetes and we think of diabetes and high blood pressure and heart problems as the biggest chronic conditions that Americans suffer from. But then we also found that substance abuse was pretty common and that overdose deaths ranked just below diabetes in terms of death counts. And that made us sit up and take notice. This is a problem that people are struggling with, and that if they are not sure about the help that they can get, we need to be educating them about this. So I think it's a really interesting statement to say that, the drug epidemic has gotten worse. Because if you look into the historic data, you'll see that the drug of choice has changed over the years. Right now, opioids account for nearly 70% of overdose deaths. But if you look further into that, that doesn't include heroin. Actually, heroin use is declining. Prescription opioids, which were a problem 15, 20 years ago, are not a problem anymore because they're cracked down on that. So the bulk of the deaths are coming from synthetic opioids like fentanyl and tramadol. This is what's driving the increase in overdose deaths. And 30 years ago, cocaine was the most popular drug of choice. Sadly, a lot of people overdosed from taking cocaine or crack cocaine, but since 2015, opioids have killed as much as 6 times as many people as cocaine.
Well, economic situation is really bad. Venezuela is the worst country with inflation right now in the world. So they said about last year we have probably about 500% on inflation. So the dollar compared to the bolivares, which is the the currency, it's just nothing. So the worst part of it is just people are their salaries and bolivares, right? Which is again the national currency, but everything else, every transaction, monetary transaction in Venezuela is done in dollars. So it's really difficult for people, who are making $2 a month, and then they need to buy rice, a bag of rice that costs them $10. So poverty has skyrocketed. I think it's 98% right now in Venezuela, the poverty levels. And the inflation is worse and worse every day. I think it's the only country where the dollar, American dollar, gets to that devaluation where it's never seen before, where you can buy something today and $2 and tomorrow will cost you $10. So it's a cycle of poverty that it's really difficult to get out of with this regimen that is right now in there. And it's really tough when you have families, face to face and tell you the stories, the things they have lived and see. It's really, really hard. We have families and, they're being kidnapped. They've been used as drug mules for the kids, families have been abused, sexually abused, kids, women, and even men that have been sexually abused. So it's a really, really dangerous journey, even though we try to telling, I know this is not the right way to come. Please make sure that you're going to be safe. People that are desperate, they just want to get here no matter what.
The writers had a really protracted strike. We followed suit. They got their deal. Many of us thought it was going to be a week, and it wound up they came to the table, they left the table, and then they came back with the offer that they had, which they called a last, final, and best offer, which a friend of mine who's a working television actress laughed at and said, "What does that mean? If we say no, there's no more TV ever again?" You know, but I think our union, looking at everything and everything that they fought for, thought in the end that the deal was best. So now we'll see what the membership says. For the last few years, we still haven't hit a place of fairness, but there's been definitely more of a mindfulness that I think is a demand by the American public to have better representation on television. So I think or hope that, let's say I did a show and they decided to show that show somewhere else, right? Korea, or just in certain parts of the country that were more black, more Latin, more this, more that, and they changed my ethnicity to make it more appealing to people. Um, I would hope there would be a massive uproar that they had done that, because there are, as we've talked about representation, there are roles that probably 5, 8 years ago I could have auditioned for, that now it's not really acceptable for me to play someone of a certain ethnicity or someone of a certain sexual orientation that's different from mine. And so I would hope that the market would regulate that,